Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Summit. Today's session is Say Goodbye to Fear-Based Birth. And we're fortunate to have with us Jade Aminah. Hi, Jade.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. Jade is a wife and mother of two, a licensed counsellor and an entrepreneur who is extremely passionate about helping mums release their fear of childbirth and tap into their true power. When she experienced fear during her first pregnancy, Jade decided to embark on a journey to understand fear in birth and to find a way to embrace and enjoy the birth of her first child. Jade believes that with a little knowledge, some preparation, and a lot of faith, reducing the pain of birth and releasing fear is absolutely achievable. And in her words, it is my joy to be able to teach and show mums just how attainable that is. Jade, why do mothers need to say goodbye to fear during pregnancy, labour and birth?
I think that in society today, birth has been kind of almost repackaged as this thing that mothers should fear. And it's interesting because fear in birth, there's actually not a lot of space for fear in birth. It's natural to be afraid. It's unknown. But in birth, fear creates resistance. And with resistance comes pain. And that creates this cycle that we see a lot of mothers go through, even though they don't quite know that's what they're going through, is that the fear is almost it kind of counters the natural process that's going on. And when we are giving birth, we want to be open, we want to be relaxed, because that creates an experience for ourselves and for our babies to be more comfortable and to have a birth, to really have the birth that we desire.
So if I can reflect that back, you're saying that when you allow fear to remain, fear is the fear, some concern in the anticipation of birth, if it's of course normal. But if you allow that fear to remain, then you're entering into a situation where the dynamic is around controlling fear and resisting pain, etc., rather than working with it. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if I could add this might be, this analogy, we're all adults here and we know how these babies got here. But when you are having sex, when you are tense, it makes the process a lot harder. When you relax, when you relax your body, it allows that process to naturally happen in a way that you can enjoy it. In birth, there's this saying like, the way they got here is the way you get them out. And that's kind of,
Right.
When I think of birth, that's kind of it's an easy way to understand why fear doesn't belong in birth. Because if you can understand why it doesn't belong in the bedroom, then you can understand why in birth it works against what you're really trying to accomplish.
Okay, so it becomes an obstacle, a barrier to opening up, I think is a good phrase you used, wasn't it? To opening up to the process that is going to happen when your baby starts that off. So it's reducing that barrier. Okay, so you touched on this a little bit. Can you expand a bit on, when fear is removed or reduced or put in its place? Talk a bit more about what takes its place. You've talked about the fact that it's similar to the way we conceive. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, so I believe that when fear is removed, you replace it with empowerment and confidence. And, when I'm a very I love analogies. I think that for topics that that might be, we all have those topics that are a little bit more difficult for us to fully understand. And then we have those topics where, it's easy for us. So I love analogies. And a topic that I can think of is something we've all experienced, which is being in school and taking a test. And when you are preparing for a test, you've studied and you feel confident about it. You go into that classroom and your body is, your body is, you feel confident about the test that you're getting ready to take because of that preparation. But when, let's say you didn't even know you had a test coming, so you didn't do any studying, and you find out that, okay, I have this test today, you're going to walk into that room not feeling very confident about your success on that test. And I think that when we prepare ourselves, when we prepare our minds, when we prepare our bodies for the test of birth, that we go into our birthing experiences feeling confident, feeling empowered, feeling ready, so that even if something, goes in a direction that we weren't exactly prepared for, we have prepared our minds to relax and to understand that at the end of all of this, all will be well.
Right. Okay. So preparation allows us to move from fear towards anticipation or even excitement. Is that right? Okay. So preparation, and I like the test analogy because you're right that if you prepare for a test, you don't go in you do go in with some feelings. I'm ready, isn't it? It's like I'm ready rather than, oh no, I'm screwed.
Right. And I think, in birth, it is important to sometimes reframe or change the words that we use to describe those feelings and those emotions. Fear, replacing that with anticipation, replacing that with excitement. It does this thing in our brain where it makes us feel where it starts to naturally just release that fear, because we're not saying the words, I'm scared, I'm fearful. We're saying, I'm excited. This is a baby that you've carried for 9 months that you're so excited to meet. So if we focus more on those feelings and those things, then naturally the fear of the birth itself, it starts to decrease.
Okay, so in terms of preparation, then, what are the things that you recommend that people do in terms of preparation?
So I think that a lot of times, like if you were to Google how to prepare for birth, I think a lot of times there's a lot of physical things that it focuses on, and those things are important. The using your birthing ball, the things that we consume, such as herbs, red raspberry leaf tea to tone our uterus. All of those things are great, and I totally recommend them. They were great for me in both of my births. But I think that for a lot of women, especially depending on the previous experiences that they've had, whether it be a traumatic first birthing experience, whether it be hearing stories from other women that doesn't make them feel so great about what they're getting ready to do. I think the most important is the inner work that we do leading up to our births to prepare ourselves emotionally. And the way that I recommend doing that, it is something that kind of happens over time during your pregnancy. And I will preface this with, if you, any of the women that are attending this session today, if you are due next week, it doesn't mean that it's too late. Obviously the earlier the better. But I think that if we take just short moments throughout our day, throughout our pregnancy, to get centered, to focus on, to work on our breathing, to listen to stories, such as all the wonderful stories being shared at the summit of women that have a different perspective on how birth is typically described in our society. Focusing on those things so that you can start to slowly gain your own confidence as you approach your birth. For some women, it's definitely not going to happen overnight, especially, like I said, depending on what you have going on from past experiences. But really focusing on your perspective on birth, meditations help a lot. Having conversations with people that support you on this journey. And really just taking time out to slow down and just kind of go inwards. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it actually is something that you can just incorporate into your day very easily. Like for me, during my first birth, I was at the time I was working where I had like a 45-minute commute to work, and being in the car by myself was the perfect time for me to do this. I would and it doesn't have to look like this, you know, like you have these like crystals and music playing and smoke. Like it doesn't have to look like that. It's very, very simple. I would just play music, and I had like an affirmation in my head that I would just constantly say throughout the day, all the time, and just little things like that. And you'll notice that over time, you'll start to just become more and more confident, so that by the time you're ready for your birth, you're ready. Like you're excited for this moment versus being afraid of it.
There's an implication, I think, there, and that was great. It's an implication about protecting yourself from the other side of that, which is the negative stuff. So, what are the ways that people can do that?
Well, you know, when it comes to the negative things about birth, the unexpected things, you know, I do understand that these are all realities. But I think that limiting the amount of focus you put on those things does make a huge difference, because we don't realize the things that we consume, it kind of plants itself in our subconscious. And when we're in birth, those things kind of come to the surface. And even though you think that, you know, if you heard something or read something in the moment, you think, oh, you know, that didn't really affect me. But in birth, you know, there's strange things that happen, especially in the mind. So I think that it's important to really pay attention to the conversations that you're having and the things that you are ingesting, in a sense.
So would you? That makes a lot of sense. I mean, would you say that? I think you're saying you do want to be informed, but you also need to separate that from getting prepared mentally for success. Is that that's I think what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. So that's I think the other thing there is the question of, you know, the people around you, some of whom you have control over whether they're with you and some you don't. You know, what about that issue? You know, whether it's a parent or a sibling or the parent. How do you manage that to make sure that there's you're protecting that space in which your confidence grows?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I know that all of this sounds like it might be good in theory, but how do you actually apply it to your everyday life? And I can definitely say from personal experience, it was very difficult during my first birth. I was a pro at it second birth, but it was very difficult because I know for me, I was very surprised at what people were saying and who was saying those things.
Okay.
Because when you make a decision to want to have a natural birth, you know, it is in a sense going against the norm, you know? So what is unknown to people is usually they fear it. You know, if it's not the norm, then that brings up fear for them. So you might have situations where those closest to you, your mother, your mother-in-law, your sibling, a close friend, will kind of inject their fears on you, and, you know, will try to deter you from wanting a natural birth. And one of the best ways, I think, to, especially at the beginning of your journey, is to really limit conversations specifically about your birth with the people who now you've noticed do not quite support it. And that could be something like, if you're having a conversation and it comes up, you find a way to just change the topic. And it doesn't have to be rude, it doesn't have to be short, but you do want to protect you know, your space around this. And if you're having conversations that don't make you feel good, then it's best to really try to avoid them. I remember I had an aunt, and I really hope she doesn't watch this, but I have an aunt who I really hated having conversations with her about my birth. She scared me. And I had to make a decision to literally not talk to her about it. And sometimes that meant ignoring her phone calls or just texting her. Or if she would bring it up in a conversation, I would find a way to like really change the topic to get her going on something else because it was not making me feel good. And you have to pay attention to those conversations that don't make you feel good.
Yeah, that can be really difficult. I remember in my own experience in our first child that um, actually saw our second, which was the first one we had at home, and there was a family member who we knew wasn't supportive of that choice, and we didn't engage with them like as you advised, and it was some pretty difficult conversations afterwards in which they expressed the pain of not being felt to be trustworthy to have that conversation with. And that was difficult, but I think it was still the right thing for us, for my wife, for what she needed in order to protect the space,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really interesting one. Yeah, I think that can be one of the hardest things to navigate because, as you say, if people are bringing their own experiences and their own perception of what's normal or what's okay, and they're keen to share those things with you, and that's not always great. And you have to be ready to deflect, avoid, prevent wherever you need to do. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think kind of practicing that is great because for any of you watching that are first time parents, you'll learn that you'll have to do the same things with your kids. If
Right.
as you raise your kid, there are things that you might not people, but there are experiences that you will want to protect them from. And that's not always easy, but you choose, your kids' safety over what's not
Right.
easy. So it's kind of giving you a jump start into what parenting is anyway.
So that reminds me that the word I was thinking of when you were talking about preparation was practice, that you're practicing so that something becomes a routine or a habit that you can return to in labor when things are getting challenging. Is that
Exactly.
the right way to look at it? Practice?
Yes, that is exactly right, Adam. When you're giving birth, there might be moments, there probably will be moments where you will have some self-doubt where you feel like you can't do this. But being that you have been practicing getting yourself back into that space, it's a lot easier to do it in birth if it became a practice versus just trying to find it while you're in birth. It's possible, it's very possible, but it's easier. And I'm about how to have an easier birth, how to have an easier birth journey. It is definitely easier to do that if you've been practicing that throughout your pregnancy.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question. We had an interview with an expert around birth partners, and she said that if the person you're thinking about having to be your birth partner, whether that's the other parent or a family member, if they don't agree with all the choices that you, the mother, are wanting to make, it's better if they're not in the room at all. You can't expect that to go well because these things are tested, aren't they, by labour? Would you agree with that? And how would you approach you linking the removal of fear with the choice of partner and the preparation of with the partner of how they what their role is, what they need to do and not do?
Yeah, I 1000% agree with that. You don't want your birth space to be a contentious one. And if there's a person there that
Right.
even if they're not voicing it, if you feel like their energy is, you can tell that they are against this, that they have something negative to say about it, then being in your birth space is not the place for them. As soon as that baby comes out, they can come flying in to the room. But
Right.
you want to be careful about having them in the room. It's not, when you are giving birth, it's not like, this big spectacle where people need to be entertained and there needs to be a big party and all these people need to be in there. It should really be limited to a few people, just a few people that are there to support you. And in terms of your support partner, whether that be your partner, the parent, whoever it is, I think that the best way to get them to have that full support while you're in birth is to include them throughout the process while you're pregnant. So, for example, for me, my husband pretty much came to every single appointment. We took, birth classes together. We took breastfeeding classes together. Like, he was there for everything. And it really, really was a great thing that we set it up that way, because for those of you that don't really follow me, you know that my first birth was an unplanned home birth. So I had my daughter at home and it was only me and my husband there. I was supposed to be on my way to the hospital, but she came so fast because my preparation was so great. And,
Wow.
So him being involved in the process, I'm not saying that him being involved made him able to deliver babies, but him being involved in that process up to that point was the exact kind of support that I needed when we realized that we would be doing this, just us. Including your support partner in the whole process will really, it empowers them too, because then they feel like they can actually support you when you are in labor. They can be your voice when you need to be focusing on contractions and going inward. They kind of have an idea of what it is, of maybe your birth plan, and they can be the one to communicate that. So I would say don't start when you are in labor. Definitely start before then and really try to include them in as many things as you can.
Yeah. And what's in terms of choice of things like provider and question of, whether to employ a doula to help or someone in that role who's also in the room. I mean, you did mention be careful about who you have in the room. And so what would you say about choice of provider, choice of location, choice of whether to have a doula, a sort of a more detached person as a birth partner? What would you say about those choices?
So I have a few answers for that. I think that a lot of this, and again, I'll bring it back to parenting. There's no manual for parenting. You just kind of figure it out on the fly. And a lot of times you're just kind of going with your intuition. You're just, you're making decisions based on what you and your heart feel is right. And that changes for every person, every parent, every child. So when it comes to selecting the right provider, it's the same process. Of course, you want to look at reviews and talk to people who have used that provider and all of that, but it really comes down to how you feel with that provider. An example, during my first pregnancy, which is really what led me on all of this, I didn't start out as like someone that loved birth and was like, not the way I am now with it. During my first pregnancy, I was very pregnant, 8 weeks pregnant, went to the doctor, they confirmed the pregnancy, and it was a midwife at that practice, and I told her, I want to give birth unmedically without an epidural. And she looked at me and she was like, that's what they all say until it comes down to it. And I just knew that like did not feel right. I was like, why is she saying that? And I actually changed providers just from that one statement that she made, but that was enough for me. And the provider that I changed to, totally in line with, my birth goals, and it was perfect. But I'm sure that there's some review out there saying that first midwife is amazing. And I'm sure she was amazing for that person, but she wasn't amazing for me. So you have to pay attention to how these things resonate with you. I don't think it's ever really too late to change. I remember at the provider that I ended up at, there was a woman there. We were in birthing classes, and she was I believe, 37 weeks pregnant, and she had just changed providers. So she was due in a
Wow.
few weeks, and whatever happened at her previous provider, she knew that it wasn't for her, and she changed to, very late in pregnancy. So we have to do what's best for, for ourselves, for our births, for our unborn children. And that really just comes down to our intuition. And, if something isn't right, then you have to go with that. Oh, and I'm
Right.
sorry. And in terms of doulas,
Yeah.
100% support doulas. I am enrolling to be a doula. Doulas are amazing for natural births. If that is your goal, and especially if there are, like, let's say there's a lot of fear and you recognize that you have extreme fear when it comes to giving birth, then in that case, a doula would be great, because they kind of also act as, in a way, like a therapist. They help you talk through those fears, work through them. There's myth busters, like they really help you as you move towards that birthing goal. When you're in labor, doulas are great for helping you get comfortable, change positions, all these things that we might not necessarily know. So if you have the means and you're able to hire a doula, 100%, doulas are great. But I do recognize, especially in the U.S., it's not covered by insurance. It is
Right.
kind of out of reach for a lot of moms. And if that's the case, then you just do your best to kind of research beforehand positions in labor, things that you can, herbs that you can take to make labor easier. Think like you will have to do a little bit of research and kind of be your own doula. Your support partner this is a good time to bring them in. But I don't think that going blind into your birth is the best thing to do, because that's when we have a lot of these outcomes that we've seen.
Yes. Okay. So trust your intuition, I think, was a big part of what you were saying there. And I think that particularly if you've done some preparation, you've done that research, you figured out what works, with the plan you want to have, the way you want to birth, but then if something's not right before you go into labor, that's probably going to be create an issue, isn't it, in labor, when you're in labor. And so don't tolerate things that don't feel right. And I thought that was a good story. 37 weeks changing your provider. That's something you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Is there something you'd like to talk about in terms of fear? The removal of fear. We've talked a lot about that. It's been great. Is there anything else in preparation that we have not covered that you want to mention?
I would just say that all of the moms that signed up for this Natural Birth Summit, that you're already on the right track. You're already doing the things that you need. You're bringing in the supports that you need in order to reach that goal of a natural birth. These are the kind of things that you want to continue to engage in throughout your pregnancy, finding communities of people that support your goal of a natural birth. So just by the sheer fact that you're here, you're already on the right track. Continue to, be inspired by the stories that have been shared throughout this week. Continue to do your research and just get excited that, birth is something that really is exciting. It can be great. It is great. And especially when you, have knowledge about the process, it just makes that journey so much better.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Great. Okay. Now, I really appreciate that. Some really good tips there for mothers, and I think that the theme of starting from a position of the mother's body is powerful and able to do this, and it's not something to be feared. I think that's really important message, and that's great. The way you talked about that, I think, is there's a good blend of informing, inspiring in there that I think people will find really great. So thank you for that. Now, if mothers want to follow up with you, and learn more about what your approach is, what kind of things can they do?
You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at I am Jade Aminah. This is the kind of stuff I talk about all day on there. So there's tons of videos there. Also my website, jadeaminah.com. I have an ebook that kind of outlines the things that we spoke about today.
Yeah.
And, you know, and not just me, just people like me. That's going to be your ticket to the natural birth that you desire.
Okay, fantastic. And are there things that you work remotely or online, and people can access things? You've got programs or courses that they can access online.
Yes, I do have 2 ebooks. One is called How to Prepare for an Easier Labor. And the other one is really a guide that you can print out and bring to the hospital with you that will give you birthing positions, that will give you ways to, if you're in pain in labor, you know, ideas and tips and tricks, especially if you don't have a doula, is something that your support partner can kind of refer to and help you as you are laboring. So those 2 things are available on my website and my social media.
Fantastic. Jade, it's been great. Thank you so much for talking about this. I think that it's just the essential topic, isn't it, really, in this whole space? It's how do you move beyond fear and anxiety into something else, something that allows you to open up and allows your baby to find its way out. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that's all for today. And thank you for watching.